this is Danny from Weird and Wired, and this is a rubber bridge guitar. This is an Audition 7002 model guitar. These were made in Japan in the 70s, and I'm a big fan of guitars from this era, and this one is no different. I love the kind of offset body style it has that looks like it was designed by Salvador Dali. This came to me in need of quite a bit of TLC. The electronics were all shot. The original tremolo bridge was busted, so I figured that this would make for a great project guitar. I've recently done a rubber bridge conversion on a Teisco SG, which was a lot of fun to do, a lot of fun to experiment with. And I enjoyed it so much I thought I'd do it again, but with a little bit of a twist, just to do a little bit more experimenting in the world of rubber bridge guitars. A rubber bridge is exactly what it sounds like. You use rubber on the bridge, generally on the saddles where the strings sit, to dampen the strings a bit, give it a much more muted quality. And two other aspects that can really accentuate the rubber bridge sound is using flat wound strings and gold foil pickups, both of which I did first time round with the Teisco SG rubber bridge modification, but I was curious to see just what difference the rubber bridge alone can make with more standard strings and pickups. To make the rubber bridge for this particular guitar, I used some rubber that I sourced from a local craft shop, and the design for the saddle piece on this guitar really lends itself well. The individual saddles can roll left to right, and ultimately you can roll them straight off of this central bar, which would leave us just with a nice bare bar that we are able to cover in shrink wrap tubing and then attach the craft shop rubber onto the shrink wrap tubing, and we've got a nice flat level rubber bridge that we can then adjust the action to. I replaced the busted tremolo bridge with this more standard tailpiece and used this ashtray bridge cover to tidy up the look of the guitar and cover up a couple of the holes left by the larger tremolo bridge. And the ground wire has also been relocated from the bridge saddles to the tailpiece. These pickups are single coil pickups from a satellite Stratocaster guitar, which is very much from the same Japanese 70s era as the Audition 7002. I had to cut a new pick guard for this project, and I'd already had my heart set on this particular material. Originally, the pickups had slide-in selector switches, which I'm always a fan of, but I spotted these on-off rocker switches, which were a near perfect match for the colour of the pick guard. Originally, this guitar had a master volume and a master tone, but I've stripped it down pretty bare bones and I'm just rocking it with a master volume control. I also replaced the broken machine head with these vintage Kluson style tuners. I tend to find with guitars from this era, these 60s, 70s Japanese import budget guitars as they're referred to, that if you want them sitting in a comfortable E standard tuning, using a lighter gauge string can be beneficial. I often use gauge 8 strings, certainly on the short scale instruments, but for this particular guitar I wanted it tuned to D standard, a little bit lower, so I used gauge 9 strings and it worked an absolute treat for this. So that is everything that went into this rubber bridge guitar, and here is how it sounds. So there we go, this Audition 7002 guitar modified with a rubber bridge and a whole bunch of different electronics from when it left the factory. I'm really happy with how this turned out. These pickups sound really cool to me. I'm not usually wowed by a middle position where you're running two pickups at the same time, but there's something about these particular pickups that just really hits a sweet spot for me. As for how this compares to the previous rubber bridge guitar with the flat wound strings with the gold foil pickups, I can certainly hear a difference. This definitely sounds brighter to my ear, and given the tonal qualities of both flat wound strings and gold foil pickups, that shouldn't really be a huge surprise. This still has a nice muted quality from the rubber bridge, but I'd say in comparison to using the flat wounds and the gold foil pickups, this definitely has a little bit more cut through clarity. I find it to be a very interesting modification. I would say it's similar to how you might choose a certain pickup for a certain sound. The rubber bridge sound is often associated with folk and indie music, but I'm a big fan of sort of dirty, fuzzed up blues, and I think it can work well for that. I think, as with most things, the only limitation is your imagination. This is a modification that I'm really enjoying at the minute, and as I say, this is the second one I've made, and I'm sure it's not going to be the last. I would love to know what you guys think. Are you familiar with the rubber bridge sound? Is it something that you've tried for yourself? Is it something that you're interested in trying out for yourself? What do you make of this one? Let me know all your thoughts and feelings, and until the next time, keep it weird and keep it wired.